Today's lesson objective, students will simplify ratios and solve proportions. So first of all, hopefully ratios sound familiar. Ratios are just when you compare two numbers. And we have several ways that we can write a ratio. We can write it like 2 with the word 2 to 5, that way. We can write it with a colon, 2 to 5. Or we could also write it as a fraction, 2 over 5. All of those are ratios, the same ratio, just written 3 different ways. Another thing that we're going to have today are extended ratios. And an extended ratio is when we're comparing more than two numbers. For instance, 2 to 4 to 8 would be an example of an extended ratio. For the first example then, we're going to simplify a ratio. So all we're doing when we simplify the ratio is reducing the fraction. But you want to be careful, make sure that you watch the units. Alrighty, so our first example, we've got 64 meters to 6 meters. I can rewrite it as a fraction. And my meters cancel out. And then I can just reduce the fraction. 2 goes into both of those numbers. And so my reduced or simplified ratio would be 32 over 3. But if I look at example B, this one still, I've got the same units, so my units are going to cancel out, and I can reduce everything by dividing by 4. So it would be 1 to 4, and again, you can write that as 1 to 4 or 1 colon 4. Those are all the same thing. Okay, so any form is fine for your homework problems on this. Now my next one, now I've got different units. I have centimeters on top, but only meters on the bottom. So I have to think about how many centimeters are in a meter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a conversion rate. So first of all, you should know that when you see centi, that means that there is a hundredth. And if you see the word milli, that means it's 1,000th. And if you see deci, that's 1/10. So a centimeter is 1/100th of a meter. So in other words, in 1 meter, I have 100 centimeters. Now the reason I put it that way is that I want my units to cancel out. And so the centimeters have to be on the bottom of my conversion unit and my meters have to be on top. And that way when I reduce it, everything cancels out. And so now I have 150 over 600 because I multiply straight across. And then that just reduces to 1/4. And so that ratio also comes out to 1/4. So here's one for you to try on your own. We're going to convert 33 yards, or we're going to do the ratio 33 yards to 9 feet. So make sure you figure out a conversion factor. Get that set up, pause the video, and get it set up. Okay, so we've got 33 yards to 9 feet, so when I multiply it, I need to have my feet on top and my yards on the bottom. So 1 yard is 3 feet, and so that's how I would write the conversion factor, and then we can cancel things out. So I know that my feet cancel out, my yards cancel out. And then also, 3 goes into itself once and into 9 3 times. And then finally, I've got 3 into 33. And so we end up with 11 over 1. So the ratio would be 11 to 1. All right, so example 2. The perimeter of a rectangle is 484, and the ratio of the length to the width is 9 to 2. And then we're going to find the area of the rectangle. Okay, so my ratio is length to width, so we write it in the same order, is 9 to 2. Well, that means that the length is going to have to be a multiple of 9, and the width is going to have to be a multiple of 2. So I can put an X on each of them, and that's what I'm going to use for my length and my width. So here's my rectangle. The length is 9x, the width would be 2x, and I know the perimeter is 484 feet. So if I add up all the sides, 9x plus 2x plus 9x plus 2x, that should equal the 484 feet. Combining my like terms, I have 22x. And so when I divide by 22, I find that x is equal to 22. So now I can go back and I can figure out my length and my width. My length was 9x, so that's 9 times 22, which comes out to 198 feet. And then my width was 2x, which is 2 times 22, or 44 feet. Okay, but then if I look back at what they want me to find, they're actually asking for the area of the rectangle. And so I do have to go one step further. And area is just length times width. So it's going to be 198 times 44. And so I end up getting that the area is equal to 8,712 square feet. Okay, so here's one for you to try on your own. This one you just have to find the dimensions, the length and the width. You don't have to find the area. So pause the video and figure it out for yourself. Okay, so length to width was 7 to 5, so I have 7x for my length and 5x for my width. And so if I add 7 and 5 and 7 and 5, I get 24x, and that has to equal my perimeter of 48. So I get that x is 2, so we just plug it back in. The length is 14 feet, and the width is 10 feet. And then if you double check it and add 14 and 14 and 10 and 10, you can see it does in fact come up to 48. All right, this next problem we're going to have has an extended ratio. It says the measures of the angles in triangle CDE are in an extended ratio of 1 to 2 to 3, and we're going to find the angle measures. Well, we're going to do the same thing that we did before, essentially. We know that the first angle has to be a multiple of 1, and the second angle has to be a multiple of 2, and the third angle will have to be a multiple of 3. So I can put an X on those to figure out which multiple it is. And then what do I know about the angles of the triangle? They add up to 180. So 1x plus 2x plus 3x is going to have to equal 180 degrees. So that's 6x equals 180. And so when we divide by 6, we get that x is equal to 30. So then I just go back and I plug it into those numbers. 1 times 30 is 30. 2 times 30 is 60. And 3 times 30 is 90. So the angles of my triangle are 30, 60, 90. So here's one for you to try on your own. The triangle Angles have an extended ratio of 1 to 3 to 5. Find the measure of the angles. Pause the video now. Okay, so we would have added x's to our numbers from our ratio, so 1x to 3x to 5x. So if I add those up, they have to add up to 180. And so I get 9x equals 180, and so x equals 20. And then when you plug it back in, first angle is 20 degrees, the second angle is 60 degrees, and the third angle would be 100 degrees. So now we're going to talk about proportions. A proportion is just when two ratios are equal. And what the cross products property says is, in a proportion, the product of the means equals the product of the extremes. So what they're talking about there is, if we have our ratios, A over B, and that's equal to C over D, then what I can do is I can cross multiply A times D that will equal B times C. And so when they're talking about the means and the extremes are A and D. And the means are B and C. But basically, if we cross multiply, we can solve a proportion. So if I look at example 4, if I multiply 10 times x, that's going to equal 5 times 16. So then I have 10x equal to 80, and so x would equal 8. On the next one, you want to remember that a fraction bar is a grouping symbol, so it's a good idea to put parentheses around it so you remember to distribute when you cross multiply. So if I multiply across here, I'm doing 2 times the quantity y plus 1, and that's going to equal 1 times 3y, going the other way. So then I distribute, so 2y plus 2 is equal to 3y. And then I subtract the 2y. And I get y is equal to 2. So what you want to remember and not get confused about is that you only reduce on the same side of the equal sign. Okay, it's really important that you be on the same side. Never, ever, 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 never reduce across an equal sign. So for instance, if I had 6/10 is equal to 5x over 3. I can only reduce if it's on the same side. Like here, I could do 3 over 5. But I cannot reduce diagonally across that equal sign. That's it. I'm done right there. You can't do anything more than that. You never, ever, ever reduce across the equal sign. Okay, so here's a proportion for you to do on your own. Pause the video and solve it now. Okay, so when you cross multiplied, you should have had 3x equals 4 times the quantity of x minus 3. So when you distribute the 4, you get 3x is equal to 4x minus 12. We subtract 3x from both sides and add 12 to both sides, and we get x is equal to 12. And just to make sure you know what you're doing, here's one more for you to do on your own. Pause the video now. Alright, so when you cross multiplied, you'd have 14 times the quantity y minus 3 is equal to 7y. And then we distribute, we get 14y minus 42 is equal to 7y. And so we add 42 and subtract 7y from both sides. 7y equals 42, and so y equals 6. And that concludes this video. Thank you for watching.